Hey everyone, it's Infinity Gamer here, and I'm going to be talking about Endsong. So Endsong is the cool book that I've been sent from Corvus Belli. It comes with a bunch of minis. It basically progresses the lore to the next kind of level. I've got the July releases that will be coming in a separate video, and then the minis that actually came with Endsong here, including these guys, which are well worth their own video, and we'll likely get one. This only arrived a couple of hours ago, so instead of trying to tell you everything that's in it when I've barely had a chance to digest it myself, I'm just going to go straight into some lore so that you can get a little bit up to speed with where Endsong progresses the timeline, and also give you a bit of a taste as to why this is such a good thing to buy yourself, because I'm not going to read every single page that's in here. We've got a whole bunch of stuff in this book. So there's like the whole first half is going into the circulars, the issues that have basically happened since Cerberus Rising. And so that's the stuff I'm not going to read, because that's so much of the fluff in here. There's disasters on some of the circulars, the Concilium Prima issues that were going on during Raven Eye. Obviously, if you kept up to date with the lore there, then this is the next progression from there. Then there was Raven Eye, then there was the Dagama Takeover, which was the narrative campaign that we could all participate in to affect the outcome of. That gets mentioned here. Haven't read it to see, because I played in the Dagama Takeover campaign, to see how the output from that narrative campaign is fed into the lore. But talking about the Penny Arcade, there's a whole bunch of stuff with Ariadna, Panoceania, Aleph, obviously, the Concilium debacle, how things have been taken over. Obviously, we've got a lot of combined army action in here. We're starting to talk more about some of the new minis that have obviously been coming out since Raven Eye and the Dagama Takeover. A whole bunch of stuff with Hak Islam and Aleph, which focuses, well, not focuses, but brings in line the lore from the Black Wind box, which is a little bit more lore. So what Endsong can probably be best described as the consolidation of lore since Raven Eye to now, which makes sense because this is a very similar book to Raven Eye with a very similar proposition. They've got, you might be able to see here, if I'm really clever and kind, I'll do some overhead shots of this bit as I flick through. So this is the painting guide for the Hak Islam units. This one focusing on the Shakush. It goes really in depth. I know they've done this before, and mostly using Angel Heraldez. I haven't seen mention as to who's done the painting guides for this, but it's the box art. It's really good, and it looks like it's fairly easy to follow, which is not a criticism. Like, I've got both of Angel's books, and I've tried to follow them, and it's great, but some of his techniques are quite advanced, and even in his basic stuff, I'm having to read every single line and just go, oh, that's how you do this. This actually looks a lot easier to follow for me. So we've got loads of Bakunin stuff, which brings us in line with the Bakunin observance things that we've got going on. Morat's still getting releases, a whole bunch of stuff going on. When you actually look back at it, there's a ton of things. Yeah, we've got pretty much unit profiles for Aleph, Hak Islam, Bakunin, very detailed stuff that we're used to be seeing. But the thing I want to read to you, to bring you up to speed with the lore, is in the reinforcement section towards the back. Well, not easy to miss, but there's so much in the front that I almost kind of like got sidetracked by the front stuff and then came to the reinforcement section. So as many of you will be aware, there's some rules modifications coming from Corvus Belli soon around reinforcements. That sort of stuff's being leaked at the moment, but I think from a lore perspective, this is trying to set us up for why reinforcements is the thing. And whether it is Corvus Belli's shameless attempt to get us to buy more minis, change our armies, there seems to be a lot of new profiles coming, which I will allude to, but might not go into too much detail around. Reinforcements is a next kind of evolution of the game, it seems. I don't yet know enough about it to form opinions or to say what it's going to do to the game. Lots of other people that are out there giving you their opinions on the half-baked information that we've received. Feel free to follow them. But what we have here is reinforcements in the human sphere. Now, what I'm going to do, as promised, is I'm going to read the first section, which is the intro into reinforcements. What the book then does is goes into each faction and explains the reinforcements that they have available to them, some of the new units that are coming for reinforcements, and the lore behind how they're getting reinforcements and why they're getting reinforcements and stuff like that. I will read some of this. I won't read all of it because you also need to go and buy the book and the pack because there's so much lore in here. I mean, I flicked 131 pages to get to the bit I'm going to be doing. That's a lot of stuff you're missing out on here. Shall we get started? Shall we go to story time? Endsong, a story for people that like stories. Reinforcements in the human sphere. The loss of circulars C8A, C8B, and C6B, as well as the breakdown of C7A, had effects that were unexpected by everyone except a few experts, and revealed the absolute military level reliance of all nations on these inter-system transports. It is true that the mightiest powers in the sphere, such as Pan-Oceania, Yujing, and O12, have ships with Minotaur motors that give them some autonomy and the ability to direct forces towards other star systems, without having to resort to the circulars managed by Trans-Etheria. However, these are the flagships of their respective navies and have a strategic value that makes them unsuitable for daily operational routine. A jump-capable ship must always be primed and ready to act, located in a strategic position, either as a deterrent or as a key element in an ongoing campaign. In addition, the recent conflict with the combined army had required the constant presence of these ships in distinct and growing theatres of operations, to the point where most of them have begun to show signs of wear and tear due to inadequate and rushed maintenance. The multiplication of incidents and theatres of operation, as well as the urgency required by the actions typical of modern blitzkrieg, leave little room to carry out the depth of maintenance required and result in the ships remaining in dry dock for several months. Even if the urban legends of the Nomad Nation and Kapukalik jump ships were confirmed to exist, they would have little or no impact on ongoing operations. The supposed Nomad jump ship, linked to the rumour about the Zona Libra, the supposed secret star system that they use as an emergency refuge, wouldn't be able to stray too far from the wormhole that leads to the system, as it would be their only way to access it. Furthermore, there is no confirmed evidence of the existence of the jump ship that, according to certain rumours, is available to the Kapukalik, Kalki, whose military and commercial fleet would greatly benefit from such a strategic advantage. Originally, the ship was supposedly the O12S Galileo 7, an old Bureau Tiandi exploratory ship sold unofficially by the Bureau to pay for its onerous operations. However, in all official O12 records, the Galileo 7 is listed as scrapped, with components reused by the O12S Endeavour and the O12S Dinakara, currently in service for Bureau Tiandi. Without their own jump ships, or with them dedicated to other needs, the military powers of the sphere must trust the international system of circulars to transfer their troops. In today's war, where technology and preparation are trusted as multipliers of the effectiveness of the troops, quality prevailing over quantity, mobility is an even more important factor than before. These highly trained and equipped troops cannot be everywhere at the same time, but they must always be available to be deployed within reasonable timeframes. Therefore, the commanders of each and every one of the armed forces of the Great Powers have established a network of locations for reaction and response groups, dispersed throughout the sphere, at distances calculated to be able to support any crisis scenario within a useful operating time. Deadlines and distances that depend on a high-speed transport network, assault and landing shuttles, and a system of circulars whose routes and schedules are constantly monitored in real time. A delicately balanced system of numerous factors that also include planetary ephemeris, where gravity wells are utilised to obtain greater impulses, but also to avoid obstacles and achieve shorter routes. This delicately balanced system can be altered by any modification to the usual circumstances, but even more so if these are related to circulars, which are the most relevant factor of all. Obviously, each major state has established alternative protocols and plans in the event that a circular fails, but no one expected that there would be so many failures, nor that the effects would last for so long, or at least the plans had not been developed in such depth, probably due to the improbability of such a scenario. The collapse of the C8 line, the redirection of the C6 route, with its access to Concilium Primer cut off, and the problems of the C7 line have made it necessary to redirect part of the traffic they supported to other lines. This has caused a saturation of the services of the other lines, whose circulars see their berthing points and accommodations saturated and overloaded to the high levels of risk, which leads to delays and waiting lists unheard of until now. Some military forces have resorted to sending troops without their own ships, housing them in minimal habitable containers which are loaded into the circulars and picking them up on the other side of the wormhole. But this is a limited solution, since it depends on the available accommodation space on the circular, as well as on the military force having transport ships in the destination system. Consequently, since the catastrophe of circulars C6 and C8, more and more frequently, military commanders have found that they do not have the necessary forces to undertake full operations. For this reason, they are forced to escalate the deployment of their troops in 2 or 3 phases, depending on how long it may take them to reach the area of operations. This presents a great level of stress for the force that is deployed in the first wave, since it has to bear the brunt of the action and hold out until the arrival of the second wave, with the added bonus of trying to establish a safe deployment zone for their brothers in arms. However, in general, safe zones do not exist on real fronts, so the second wave usually arrives when all hell is already broken loose and the enemy is throwing everything it has against them. Military analysts from all the great powers have been able to verify the increase in the intensity of the fighting since the circular catastrophe. There is no commander that does not throw their all into the meat grinder to attempt to finish off an adversary with limited resources before it can be reinforced and turn the confrontation around. Aggressive tactics, immediate contact, and risk-taking are favoured in fast-paced assault actions that lack contingency or support plans and rely on all-or-nothing manoeuvres. Never before have these small, rapid reaction forces that all the powers had throughout the human sphere been so valued. Although with tactical and strategic purposes as diverse as those forces themselves. However, despite the variety of their operational purposes, in general, each and every one of them can be defined as a joint force capable of reacting in a very short time to a wide range of security challenges, from crisis management to collective defence. However, the current reality of conflicts in the sphere, with the combined army's multiple offensive in Paradiso, Concilium and Dawn, has considerably reduced the operational diversity. Currently, the reaction and reinforcement groups, regardless of whether they were originally remote response forces or a reply to local threats, have become the ace up the sleeve of the forces that are constantly pushed to the limit. When they are not last resort for victory, they are a means to get out alive from a sticky situation of a failed operation. That is a report by Joel Tolbert, an independent field agent and analyst identified by various intelligence services under the code name Rattlernext. Written for Bibliotech at the request of an undisclosed corporate client. That was a struggle because it's written in orange and I have really gone hard on the red light. So the next thing that we have, I don't know if this is still appropriate or not because we're no longer in story time, is we then jump into Pan-Oceania and what I believe to be their reaction force. It then breaks down, so it gives you the lore behind that. It then gives you the troops, I believe, that make up part of that. And it does that for Pan-Oceania, Yujing, still Yujing, still Yujing. Jing gets a lot of pages in this section. Still Yujing. Ariadna. Ariadna. Still more Ariadna. Hakislan. Still Hakislan. No, that's... the logos have changed. That is Nomads. Combined Army. O12. Aleph. Na2. Worth noting, NA2 gets 2 pages, 1 unit type. Toha gets 4 pages, which is on the small side in comparison to everyone else. And then we get the mission set at the end. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you one of these special, just the lore behind the team, so that you can get a bit of a flavour for what it looks like. I'm not then going to go into the units because I want there to be a bit of a surprise for other videos, for myself, but also for other people as well who might go into this in more detail. I know Fast Panda have got some content coming out soon, not sure what they're going to cover, but it could be some of this. So I'm just going to go through the O12 section of this to give you an idea as to what each of those factions then gets, some more than others. We get the lore. I'm going to read the lore paragraphs. I'm then going to outline the units that are mentioned, but not their lore. Maybe one of them, but not all of them, because I don't want to give too much away. There's a lot. So shall we dive into O12? Gladius teams. People tend to forget that most of the human sphere is a frontier territory, and that the presence and power of the state, as well as the rule of the law, are either limited or merely symbolic. Those territories out there are the god-forsaken Wild West everyone has seen in Maya productions, where the nearest sheriff is always too far away to be of any help. In such circumstances, colonists feel safer when they carry a weapon to defend themselves, rather than calling for help that won't arrive in time. The problem is that the bad guys are always better armed, better equipped, and more used to unbridled violence than any colonist. To sum it up, in the Wild West of the human sphere, innocent civilians stand to lose. However, there will always be someone who will stand between them and the bad guys, and that someone is Section Sparta of Bureau Aegis. It may not get there before the sheriff, but when it does, it will be able to accomplish far more than him. This is the purpose of the Gladius teams. Rapid Deployment Investigative and Tactical Intervention Task Forces, named after the ancient Roman sword. This is a hybrid unit composed of agents from the different teams of Section Sparta, who have been chosen for their special operations profile to fulfill various critical functions in rapid deployments. The jackboots are the muscle, with the nickname given by those who don't follow their orders and suffer the consequences. The vidok are the spies, and anything else they are required to be. The nightshades are the thieves, as well as assassins when necessary, and the ment agents are the team's sleuths. All of them make up the core of the Gladius teams, which don't necessarily mean that they always act together, since these teams also draw on the regular units of Section Sparta and Starmada. Sword 4 deploys its Gladius teams in situations when local authorities request expert assistance or when their intelligence or military resources aren't enough. So, in a way, these teams become the big brother that brings the playground bully to heel. It's also common that Section Statera requests their deployment in sensitive cases with broad political, economic, or social repercussions. For instance, if foul players are suspected on the part of local authorities. In these scenarios, the Gladius teams must be able to assert O12's authority. In these scenarios, by force if necessary, but always in accordance with the international law, or with the threat of very large and heavy baton. Although most of the missions carried out by Gladius teams are police operations and focus on investigative tasks on the ground, the phrase "on the ground" implies that it's very common for them to see some action, hence the importance of the tactical element of these teams. In these turbulent times, the idea of the Gladius teams as multitask tactical intervention groups, instead of seeing them only as detectives or intelligence agents, has led Sword 4 to use them more and more as rapid reaction force in situations where the units in the area of operations have been overwhelmed, or when a high-level threat has been identified, but there aren't enough logistical resources or personnel to send in the larger force. The self-reliant and independent nature of the Gladius teams makes them especially advantageous in these circumstances, as they will know how to step in and be successful when they must work alone, or how to enforce Bureau Aegis' presence and authority until the main force arrives, or until the political pressure exerted by O12 comes to fruition. The diversified character of the Gladius teams causes them to be perceived in a variety of ways, depending on the scenario. From being considered an annoying meddling by authorities who are keen to remain autonomous but still abide by international law, to being called a hostile interference by local stakeholders who take advantage of isolation and lack of information in order to maintain the tyranny of their will. However, none of these labels is worth anything when compared to the thankfulness of the innocents who were set free thanks to the detective work of a Gladius team. Or of the families who stopped being pressured by corporations that thought they could do whatever they wanted. Or of the agents and troops who were saved in the nick of time by the arrival of a Gladius team. For all of them, the Gladius teams are heroes who illustrate that there is no greater beacon of hope for the human sphere than that of a truly effective justice, even if it must be delivered with the sharp blade of a gladius. The feature stories you really want to see, brought to you only by Newscom. So yes, we go into the unit profiles next. We've got roadbots, who you should be familiar with by now, Sharkos, we get huge amounts of lore around both of those, Secudroids, and then we get into the new ones that you may have heard mentioned in that brief introduction. Nightshades, clandestine action unit. Vidocq, I'm not sure on the spelling there, it's VIDOCQ, so probably way off, but that's how my gut is saying to pronounce it. Vidocq Multipurpose Security Brigade, Jackboots, Armed Presence Units, and then Ment Agents, Professional Standards Investigation Department. Then we go into the LF section. So I'll read you one of the ones we have, maybe not one of the longer ones because I'm probably running out of interest from a lot of you, so I don't want to push my luck. Let's go for the Vidocq, because let's really lean into the thing that I'm not confident about saying, and then let's repeat it multiple times. So the lore here for the Vidocq Multipurpose Security Brigade, we have some artwork of not the Vidocq, but the Nightshades there, which are gonna look cool. The saying, "It takes a thief to catch another thief," seems to be the key idea behind the Multipurpose Security Brigade, but it also reflects the biography of the historical character it's named after. Criminalist and investigator Eugène-François Vidocq, before becoming the legendary French detective, was a thief, a soldier, a privateer, a smuggler, a convict, and a policeman. After a long criminal career, he began to work with the Paris police and became one of the first public investigators appointed by the French government. Vidocq suggested creating a special police unit called the Brigade de Sûreté Security Brigade that eventually became the Sûreté Nationale, National Security, which he commanded with great success. Vidocq always surrounded himself with personnel who, like him, had a criminal past, or at least a shady one, with outstanding results. And he has always remained a referent for all special divisions of any security forces willing to operate in unconventional ways. Obviously, one of these divisions is Sword Force Special Operations Department, which is always on the lookout for new ways to maximize the efficiency of a small force such as Section Sparta. From its inception, the Gladius team was conceived as an autonomous investigative and tactical task force, and it was clear that it was to be a small force that would occasionally have to take on more numerous adversaries. Therefore, their readiness and superior training would be the competitive advantage that would allow them to successfully complete their mission. The difficulty was determining what specific department its members were expected to excel in, so as to outperform their opponents. There were countless possible scenarios, and it proved impossible for the entire team to be staffed with such highly trained agents. The solution was to include one or two elite agents in the team to provide those special skills and complement the rest of the troops, who could be more conventional. But even this was difficult to achieve, because there weren't enough operatives available who were so skilled, so it was necessary to recruit outside the usual circles and broaden the search to find individuals who knew the business well, even if from a different angle. They needed versatile, multi-purpose operatives who excelled in a variety of tactical roles and could do it all. As a certain analyst put it, what we need is not so much Renaissance men, but rather Renaissance troops who can handle every possible scenario. And if they couldn't find them in the Sword Force training centres, they would look for them elsewhere, both in the war market and in sections Tetero's files of usual suspects. Sure, criminal organisations in Submondo can afford to pay top professionals, some of the best in the private sector, at high rates that are unaffordable for public budgets. But if you don't have the cash, you just need to offer these private operatives an alternative that might interest them. Either a get-out-of-jail-free card, a witness protection program for their families, or ridding them of some lingering threat, such as tax collectors or the bounty hunter syndicate. These alternatives are always more effective than the filthy lucre, because a much-needed favour creates a stronger bond than any sum of money, and this unit's commanders always make sure that their agents are fully committed, no matter how cynical their attitude may be. Or so the rumour goes, because this unit is protected under the Official Secrets Act, and its personnel records are classified, although its code name suggests that this may very well be true. Regardless of all the inane gossip, this program has been a resounding success, as it has become key to the Gladius teams, and has helped to relieve the pressure on other units of the Special Operations Department to free them up for other tasks. Having been on the wrong side of the law, the Vidocq know the minds of their enemies in such a way that they can keep one step ahead of them. Moreover, perhaps because of their questionable history, these operatives are always more casual than Academy graduates, and their methods and answers are far less traditional, which is accepted in the Gladius teams, if only because they have no other choice, and because the Vidocq always deliver, no matter how bad the situation may get. Their tactical flexibility and their brash, carefree attitude might lead one to believe that these rough scoundrels have a death wish, but their affinity for death is focused solely on their enemies. Their light-hearted, cocky disposition is rooted precisely in their absolute faith in their superior skills, the ones that made them eligible for the multi-purpose brigade, and in knowing that they're now the hunters, rather than the fugitives. So we get similar stories for all of the newbies. All of those factions that I mentioned get similar stories, and that is why you should definitely consider getting Endsong if you have a remote interest in the lore of Infinity. This is chock full of it, and background around units that you're probably familiar with but don't necessarily know the background story behind them. And as I said, that's not even the core bit of lore that's in here. That is like the first 20 pages are bringing us up to speed. Then we go into the faction lore, and it's all amazing from there. Definitely have a read of this if you get a chance to. It's what I'm going to do for the rest of the evening. Thank you for watching the video, always appreciate it. Hopefully you found it useful, and I will be back soon with some marshmallows for more story time.